Ambassador Gregory Walsh sighed as he fixed his formal uniform for the fifth time. After 20 years working for Earth's diplomats, he had met many alien species. He had talked with the methane-breathing Caldorians, the hive-minded Vespula, and even the crystal beings from Proxima Centauri. But today's meeting with the Zathrai Dominion would be different. Humans needed the rare minerals the Zathrai controlled to continue growing their space colonies. The main hall of the Zathrai ship glowed with blue lights from living orbs hanging from the ceiling. Gregory noticed how the Zathrai nobles stood, apart from the other aliens. Their shiny scales and long heads were held high with pride. Everyone said the Zathrai were proud, and now he could see why. "Ambassador Walsh, welcome to this historic meeting," said Chief Diplomat Arya Franklin, keeping her voice steady despite the tension in the room. "The Zathrai asked for you specifically." "They know about your good work," Gregory nodded. "Let's hope they like what they see." As they walked toward the Zathrai group, Gregory looked at their fancy armor and the detailed family symbols on their scaled foreheads. The tallest one, clearly the leader, turned to face them slowly. "I am High Lord Zekthrin of House Vexeler, third in line to the Imperial throne," the alien said, his translator changing his clicks and hisses into English. "We agreed to this meeting because we are curious, nothing more." Gregory bowed exactly. As deep as his briefing had told him to showing respect without looking weak. "High Lord, I bring greetings from Earth and all human colonies. We are honored that you agreed to discuss things that could help us both." A smaller Zathrai, wearing fewer symbols but more jewels that sparkled in the dim light, pushed forward. Suddenly, "This is the human representative?" The young noble's voice was full of scorn. "I expected someone more impressive." Gregory kept his diplomatic smile in place. He had heard worse insults in his career. The young noble walked around Gregory like a predator. "I am Renjax, heir to House Drelver. My father says humans are barely better than the animals we create for food. Your species only reached the stars 100 years ago. We have been traveling between worlds for thousands of years." High Lord Zekthrin made a sharp gesture that Gregory didn't understand, but Renjax ignored it. "Your kind still shows signs of your primitive origins?" Renjax continued, leaning too close to Gregory. "I can smell the mammal sweat on you. How disgusting." The room went quiet. Several alien diplomats shifted uncomfortably. Arya Franklin took a half step forward, but Gregory subtly motioned for her to stay back. "Perhaps," Gregory said quietly. "Your youth explains both your good sense of smell and your bad manners, young heir." Gasps echoed around the room. Renjax's scales flared up in what Gregory knew was a sign of anger. "You dare? You insignificant, short-lived creature. Do you know what my house could do to your weak colonies with just one warship?" High Lord Zekthrin finally stepped in. "Enough, Renjax, you bring shame to us." But the damage was done. Gregory stood perfectly still, his face showing nothing. Then, without a word, he made a perfect formal bow not to Renjax, but to High Lord Zekthrin, turned and walked calmly toward the exit. "Where are you going, human?" "I did not say you could leave," Renjax called out. Gregory didn't look back as the huge doors opened for him. The silence in the hall was complete as he left. What Gregory didn't know was that his silent exit would change the course of human-Zathrai relations forever. In Zathrai culture, leaving without speaking after being insulted was the highest form of counter-insult possible. It was an ancient ritual called the Silvex Katar, the ritual of superior silence. Only the most powerful Zathra nobles used it, and it took decades to master. By performing it perfectly, Gregory had accidentally declared himself superior to Renjax and his entire house. As the doors closed behind him, Gregory heard the beginning of shouting in the hall. He walked steadily to the human shuttle bay where his pilot, Jack Dawson, waited. "That was quick," Jack said, surprised to see the ambassador return so soon. "Did it go well?" "Not exactly," Gregory replied, settling into his seat. "Let's get back to our ship quickly." As the shuttle departed from the massive Zathrai vessel, Gregory looked out the viewport at the alien ship. He had no idea of the storm he had just created. Back on the Zathrai ship, chaos had erupted. Renjax was screaming in his native language, his translator unable to keep up with his rage. High Lord Zekthrin was attempting to restore order, but the other alien diplomats were all talking at once. What just happened? Arya Franklin asked of Vespula, diplomat who stood nearby. The insect-like alien's compound eyes reflected the blue light as it turned to her. Your ambassador just performed the most perfect Silvex Katar I have ever witnessed. It is a dominance ritual that has not been seen in diplomatic circles for centuries. A what? Arya asked, confusion clear on her face. A ritual of silence. By leaving without speaking after such an insult in Zathrai culture, he has claimed superiority over the young noble and his entire house. It is unprecedented from a non-Zathrai. Arya's eyes widened, but he didn't know what he was doing. That makes it even more powerful, Vespula replied. The ritual requires perfect timing and precise movements. For your ambassador, too. To do it naturally, without training, some Zathrai will see it as a sign from their ancestors. On the human diplomatic vessel Olive Branch, Gregory was briefing the captain on what had happened when urgent messages began flooding in. Sir, Communications Officer Ryan Dunn called out. We're receiving messages from Earth Command, the Galactic Council, and the Zathrai High Command. Priority alerts are coming in from 3 colony worlds. Something big is happening. Captain, Frank Moore looked at Gregory. What exactly did you do in there? Gregory shook his head. I just left when that young noble insulted humanity. I didn't say anything. Well, apparently that meant something to them, Frank replied, reading the incoming messages with growing concern. The Zathrai fleet is mobilizing. Half their ships are heading to defensive positions. The other half seem to be heading toward our colonies. Gregory felt a chill run down his spine. Get me everything we have on Zathrai cultural rituals and dominance displays now. As the information came in, Gregory's face grew pale. He had accidentally performed one of the Zathrai's most sacred rituals perfectly. In their eyes, he had just thrown down a challenge, not just to the young noble Renjax, but to the entire power structure of House Drelver, one of the oldest and most powerful houses in the Dominion. I need to speak with Earth Command immediately, Gregory said, his voice tense. And then I need to send a message to High Lord Zekthrin. What are you going to do? Frank asked. Gregory stared out the viewport at the stars. I'm not sure yet. But I know one thing, I can't take back what I did without making things worse. In their culture, claiming it was a mistake would be an even greater insult. So what then? I'm going to have to double down, Gregory said quietly. I'm going to have to convince them I knew exactly what I was doing. As the Olive Branch changed course for the nearest human outpost, Gregory Walsh began planning how to turn a diplomatic disaster into an opportunity. His silent exit had said more than words ever could, and now he would have to live with the consequences. Captain Olivia Reeves of the survey ship Horizon Seeker frowned at the urgent message on her screen. 2 days after Ambassador Walsh walked out of the Zathrai meeting, the effects were spreading faster than anyone could control them. So the ambassador just left? She asked her second-in-command, Lieutenant Paul Garcia. Paul nodded, his dark eyes serious. According to the reports, he didn't say a word, just bowed and walked out. The Zathrai young noble got very angry afterward. Olivia ran a hand through her short blonde hair. And now we're being called back from our survey mission. We're 3 weeks from finishing. All human ships are being called back to protect our colonies, Paul confirmed. There are rumors the Zathrai might see this as a big insult they can't forgive. An insult? Their noble insulted the ambassador first. Paul shrugged. Apparently in Zathrai culture, leaving a formal meeting without being dismissed by the highest-ranking noble is like spitting in someone's face and insulting their family at the same time. The bridge went quiet as everyone thought about this. Information. Set course for Arcturus colony, Olivia finally ordered. Maximum speed. As the Horizon Seeker changed course, news kept coming in. The Galactic Council was calling an emergency meeting. The Zathrai had pulled their ambassadors from 3 different alien homeworlds. Military ships were moving across multiple sectors. This doesn't make sense, Olivia muttered as she read the updates. All this over a diplomatic mistake? Later. That evening, she got a personal message from her old academy friend, Dr. Nathan Miller, who now works studying alien politics for the diplomatic corps. It's not about him leaving, Nathan's message explained. It's about what it meant to them. In Zathrai culture, silence is the ultimate expression of power. Their nobles train for years to master the art of showing superiority through silence. When Ambassador Walsh left without speaking, making a perfect ceremonial bow, first he accidentally performed a 1,000-year-old Zathrai dominance ritual perfectly. In their eyes, he didn't just insult young Renjax. He symbolically stripped him of his noble status and claimed superiority over his entire house Drelver. It would be like someone walking into a royal palace in the old days and taking the crown right off the king's head. Olivia stared at the message in disbelief. Computer, find all available information on Zathrai dominance rituals and noble house structures. As the information appeared on her screen, Olivia began to understand how big this was. Ambassador. Walsh hadn't just caused a diplomatic problem, he had accidentally declared himself superior to one of the oldest noble houses in the Zathrai Dominion, and the most troubling part? High-ranking officials in the Dominion were now divided on how to respond, with some arguing that Walsh's perfect execution of their ritual might actually indicate humans were far more knowledgeable about Zathrai culture than they thought, and therefore potentially more dangerous. Meanwhile, on the diplomatic vessel Olive Branch, Gregory Walsh was studying everything he could find about Zathrai culture. The more he learned, the more he realized the seriousness of what he had done. The Silvex Kadar, he read aloud, the ritual of superior silence dates back to the pre-space flight era of Zathra civilization. It was traditionally used by those of lower status but moral superiority to challenge the corrupt powerful. Director of Xenological Affairs Samantha Doyle entered his quarters without knocking. Gregory, we have a problem. The Zathra High Council has sent a formal request. They want you to return for a clarification ceremony, alone. Gregory looked up from his reading. They want to kill me. That's what our analysts think, yes, Samantha replied. Or at least capture you. Either way, you can't go. Gregory was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he pointed to something on his screen. Look at this. According to these old records from the Vespula archives, the original Silvex Katar wasn't about dominance at all. It was a way for the physically weaker to challenge the morally corrupt without bloodshed. What does that matter now? Samantha asked. It matters because the Zathrai noble houses have been twisting their own traditions for thousands of years. Gregory said. They've been using these rituals to maintain power. But the original meanings were different. So what are you saying? Gregory stood up. I'm saying I'm going to accept their invitation. That's suicide, Samantha protested. Not if I prepare properly, Gregory replied. I need access to the complete Vespula archives on Zathrai history, and I need a secure data crystal. That can't be detected by Zathrai scanners. Despite strong objections from military advisors and Samantha herself, 3 days later, Gregory boarded a small shuttle bound for the neutral zone where the Zathrai flagship waited. He went alone and appeared to be unarmed but hidden in his sleeve was a small data crystal containing information that might save his life and possibly change Zathrai society. The massive Zathrai vessel made his shuttle look tiny. As docking procedures finished, Gregory straightened his formal uniform one last time and touched the small data crystal hidden in his sleeve. High Lord Zekthrin waited in the docking bay, surrounded by warriors. The young noble Renjax was not there. Ambassador Walsh, the High Lord said through his translator, you have caused quite a disturbance in our dominion. Gregory bowed exactly the same depth as before and remained silent. The High Lord's inner eyelids flickered in what Gregory now knew was surprise. You continue to show unexpected knowledge of our ways. Come, the council is waiting. As they walked through the massive ship, Gregory stayed silent, responding to questions with only slight nods or gestures. Each perfectly timed response seemed to make his escorts more nervous. Finally, They reached the council chamber, where 7 ancient Zathras sat in a half-circle. In the center stood a small platform. "You will explain your actions to the High Council," Zekthrin stated. Gregory stepped onto the platform and looked at each council member in turn. Then, with careful movements, he reached into his sleeve and took out the data crystal. Placing it on a scanner, the room's displays activated, showing historical records not from humans but from the ancient Vespula archives. The record showed the original Silvex Kadar ritual and its origins. According to these neutral third-party accounts, the ritual was never meant as an insult, but as a way for the physically weaker to challenge the morally corrupt without bloodshed. When the presentation ended, Gregory finally spoke. "Honored Council, I did not come to explain but to understand. Was the young noble's assessment of humanity correct? Are we merely livestock to you? If so, I have performed the ritual exactly as your ancestors intended, as a challenge not to House Drelver, but to the moral corruption that views thinking beings as lesser creatures." The council chamber erupted in hisses and clicks too fast for the translators to process. Some of the council members rose from their seats, scales flaring in anger. Others remained seated, their inner eyelids rapidly blinking as they processed this information. High Lord Zekthrin raised his clawed hand, and the chamber gradually fell silent. "Ambassador Walsh, you claim to know the original meaning of our most sacred ritual better than we do?" "I claim nothing," Gregory replied calmly. "I merely present historical evidence from a neutral third party. The Vespula have been documenting the cultures of spacefaring species for over 50,000 years. They have no reason to falsify such records." One of the oldest council members leaned forward. "If what these records show is true, then our noble houses have been distorting our sacred traditions for millennia to maintain power," another council member added, his voice a low hiss. High Lord Zekthrin turned to Gregory. "Ambassador, you have given us much to consider. The council will deliberate on this matter. You will be escorted to guest quarters until we reach a decision." As Gregory was led from the chamber, he caught a glimpse of several council members, huddled in intense discussion. He had given them a lot to think about and possibly started something that could change the entire Zathra Dominion. Back in human space, the waiting was the hardest part. No one had heard from Ambassador Walsh since his shuttle docked with the Zathrai flagship. Military ships were on high alert, ready to respond if the Zathrai made any aggressive moves toward human colonies. On the Horizon Seeker, Captain Olivia Reeves and her crew monitored communications constantly, hoping for news. When it finally came, it was not what anyone expected. The news of what happened in the Zathrai council chamber spread quickly, though details were unclear. What everyone knew was that Ambassador Walsh had come out alive and was accompanied by High Lord Zekthrin himself. They walked together too. A formal announcement room where representatives from all major galactic news networks had quickly gathered. In her office on Earth, Director of Galactic Relations Betty Howard watched the live feed with her entire staff around her. "This is unheard of," said her assistant, Keith Nelson. "The Zathrai never allow broadcasts from their ships." High Lord Zekthrin spoke first, his translator sharing words that diplomats would remember for generations. "The Dominion recognizes in humanity a worthy voice in galactic affairs," the High Lord announced. "Ambassador Walsh has shown wisdom our histories suggest has not been seen since the early Enlightenment era of our own development." The cameras moved to Gregory, who looked calm despite what must have been a very difficult meeting. "Humanity values the wisdom and ancient heritage of the Zathra Dominion," Gregory responded. "We look forward to a relationship based on mutual respect and understanding." What wasn't broadcast, but what Betty learned hours later through secret channels, was far more important. Gregory had found ancient Zathrai historical records that even most modern Zathrai didn't know about. The Silvex Kadar ritual had begun as a way for physically weaker individuals to challenge moral corruption in their superiors, but over thousands of years, the noble houses had deliberately hidden this origin to keep their power. By showing third-party historical evidence from the Vespula archives, Gregory had forced the council to face their own twisted traditions. More importantly, he'd shown that humans, despite being new to space travel, had done their research. They weren't the ignorant newcomers the Zathrai had thought. On the colony world of New Montana, Dr. Iris Kelly watched the broadcast with special interest. As one of the researchers who had provided Gregory with the Vespula archive data, she understood how important this moment was. He did it, she whispered to herself, closing the secure channel that had just delivered a personal thank you message from the ambassador. The message included something else, a warning that Renjax and his father had left the Dominion capital in a private warship, destination unknown. While the official Zathrai position had changed dramatically, House Drelver had been humiliated before the entire Dominion. Such humiliation, Gregory warned, would not go unanswered. Iris immediately began writing alerts to the Colonial Defense Network. If House Drelver decided to take revenge, the outer colonies would be their most likely targets. Meanwhile, aboard the Horizon Seeker, Captain Olivia Reeves received new orders not to return to a defensive position, but to continue their survey mission with an additional passenger, a Zathrai cultural attach named Tevener, who would join them as part of the newly established exchange program. "This is going to be interesting," Olivia told Paul as they prepared for their new guest's arrival. "Have you ever worked with a Zathrai before?" Paul shook his head. "Never thought I'd see the day, honestly. Not after how they looked down on us at first contact." "Well, apparently Ambassador Walsh changed their minds." "Not all of them," Paul cautioned, showing her a security report. "House Drelver's ships have disappeared, no signals, no communication with Dominion Command." Olivia frowned. "Keep our sensors at maximum sensitivity and check in regularly with nearby colonies. I don't want any surprises." As they welcomed the Zathrai attach aboard, Olivia noticed how young Tevener seemed, and how his scales lacked the fancy crests of the nobles she'd seen in recordings. When they were alone in her ready room, she asked about his background. "I am not of the noble houses," Tevener explained, his translator showing a hint of pride. "I am what you might call a commoner. Your Ambassador Walsh's actions have created opportunities for my kind that did not exist before." "How so?" Olivia asked, fascinated. "By reviewing the true origin of the Silvex Catar, he has awakened questions among my people about other traditions the noble houses may have changed over time. There is much discussion now in places where there was only acceptance before." Olivia realized then that Gregory Walsh had done far more than prevent a war. He had potentially started a cultural revolution back on Earth. Gregory was debriefing the diplomatic corps on everything that had happened. The room was packed with senior officials eager to hear firsthand about his experience. "The key was finding the original meaning of the ritual," Gregory explained. The Zathrai Council members were genuinely shocked to learn how their traditions had been manipulated over time. Some were angry, others were in denial, but a few, including High Lord Zekthrin, were open to reconsidering long-held beliefs. "And now?" asked Director Samantha Doyle. "Now we have an unprecedented opportunity," Gregory replied. "The Zathrai Dominion has agreed to formal diplomatic relations, trade agreements, and cultural exchanges. They're even allowing non-nobles to serve in diplomatic positions for the first time in their history. All because you walked out of a meeting?" someone asked from the back of the room. Gregory smiled. "All because I accidentally performed the perfect silent protest against corruption, and then had the evidence to back it up when challenged." The debriefing continued for hours as Gregory shared every detail of his interaction with the Zathrai Council. He emphasized that while this was a major breakthrough, they needed to be careful moving forward. "The noble houses won't give up power easily," he warned. "House Drelver in particular feels humiliated, and there are rumors they're gathering allies among the more conservative houses. We should expect some pushback, possibly even isolated acts of aggression against human interests." As if to confirm his warning, reports came in later that day of a human trading post near the border of Zathrai space being harassed by an unidentified ship matching Zathrai design patterns. The ship had not attacked, but had performed aggressive scanner sweeps and ignored all hails before jumping to FTL. "It's starting," Gregory told Samantha as they reviewed the report. House Drelver is testing our defenses, looking for weaknesses. What do you recommend? Samantha asked. We need to strengthen our relationship with the Zathra central government while preparing for possible rogue actions by noble houses, Gregory said. And we need to learn more about their internal politics. Who supports the changes we've started, and who opposes them? Over the next few weeks, humans and Zathrai began working together in ways that would have seemed impossible just a month earlier. Zathrai cultural experts came to Earth to help humans better understand their complex society, while human diplomats and traders were welcomed in Zathrai space for the first time. But as Gregory had predicted, not everyone was happy about these changes. Reports of harassment against human ships and outposts continued, always by unmarked vessels that disappeared before they could be identified. And in the Zathrai Dominion itself, rumors spread of growing divisions among the noble houses, with some openly questioning the wisdom of allowing primitives like humans to be treated as equals. On New Montana, Dr. Iris Kelly was working late in her office when her security system alerted her to an approaching ship. It wasn't scheduled and it wasn't responding to hails. As colony defense forces scrambled to intercept, Iris quickly backed up her research data and headed for the shelter. The unidentified ship entered orbit and launched. A single shuttle toward the surface, landing near the main research facility. Colony security surrounded the landing site, weapons ready. When the shuttle door opened, a single Zathrai stepped out. Iris recognized him immediately from the briefing files. Renjax, the young noble whose insult had started everything. I come alone and unarmed, he announced, his translator making his voice sound flat and emotionless. I seek the human called Iris Kelly. Iris stepped forward, flanked by security officers. I am Dr. Kelly. What do you want, Renjax of House Drelver? The young noble's scales flared briefly in surprise. You know me? We know a lot about you, Iris replied calmly, including the fact that your house has gone rogue against the Dominion's new policies. Renjax hissed something his translator didn't catch. Then he straightened to his full height. I have come to understand the human who helped Ambassador Walsh humiliate my house. Before we destroy you, I wanted to see what kind of creature would assist in such an insult. Iris met his gaze steadily. I help provide historical facts, nothing more. If those facts humiliated your house, perhaps you should question why your ancestors felt the need to hide them. For a moment, Renjax seemed speechless. Then his scales flattened against his body in what Iris recognized as a sign of controlled anger. This is not over, he said finally. My father has rallied 3 noble houses to our cause. We will not allow humans to destroy thousands of years of tradition. Not destroy, Iris corrected him. Restore? There's a difference. Without another word, Renjax turned and re-entered his shuttle. As it lifted off, Iris contacted Earth Command to report the encounter. This personal visit from Renjax confirmed what they had feared. House Drelver was planning something, and New Montana might be their first target. 6 weeks after Renjax's visit to New Montana, the situation had grown more tense. 3 more human outposts reported being scanned by unmarked Zathrai ships, and 1 supply vessel claimed it was followed for 2 days before the mysterious ship finally disappeared. Despite these incidents, official relations between Earth and the Zathrai Dominion continued to improve. Trade agreements were signed, cultural exchanges expanded, and diplomatic missions were established on both worlds. Gregory Walsh had become something of a celebrity among both humans and Zathrai. He was invited to speak at the Galactic Council, where he shared his experience and called for greater understanding between all species. Many Zathrai commoners viewed him as a hero who had challenged the noble house's grip on power, while the nobles themselves were divided, some seeing him as a dangerous troublemaker, others as a catalyst for needed changes. On the Horizon Seeker, Captain Olivia Reeves and her crew had grown used to having Tevenor aboard. The young Zathrai had proven to be an excellent cultural guide, helping them avoid misunderstandings and teaching them about Zathrai customs. In return, he eagerly learned about human ways, especially their music and art, which were entirely new concepts to him. In Zathrai culture, Tevener explained one evening in the ship's lounge. We do not create art for beauty or pleasure. Everything we make must have a practical purpose first. Music exists only for military marches or religious ceremonies. That seems sad, said Lieutenant Paul Garcia. Some of my happiest memories are of listening to music with friends or family. Tevenarus. Scales rippled in what the crew now recognized as his version of a thoughtful expression. Perhaps this is why many young Zathrai are so fascinated by human culture now. You have shown us possibilities we never considered. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent call from the bridge. Captain, to the bridge immediately. We have a situation. Olivia hurried to her post, followed by Paul, and after a moment's hesitation, Tevener. On the main view screen was a sight that made Olivia's blood run cold. 3 Zathrai warships in attack formation, heading straight for the colony world of Haven. They're not responding to hails, reported Communications Officer Lisa Bennett, and their transponders are disabled. We can't identify which house they belong to. We don't need transponders to know who they are, Tevener said quietly. Those are House Drelver ships. I recognize the modification patterns on their hulls. Olivia turned to him. Are you sure? Yes, my father worked in a shipyard that serviced their fleet. These are definitely Drelver ships, and they appear to be configured for planetary assault. Olivia made her decision instantly. Set course to intercept, maximum speed. Alert Haven Colony and Earth Command. We need to buy time for reinforcements. To arrive, as the Horizon Seeker changed course, Tevener approached Olivia. Captain, I should inform you that those ships outgun us at least 10 to 1. They are war vessels, not survey ships. I'm aware of that, Olivia replied grimly. But we can't just let them attack a civilian colony. If we can delay them even for a few hours, it might be enough time for people to reach the shelters. Tevener's scales flattened against his body in what Olivia now knew was a sign of respect. Then I request permission to send a message to the Zathrai ships. Olivia hesitated. What kind of message? A warning. From a member of the Imperial Cultural Exchange Program. It might make them pause, at least briefly. And if they ignore an official Imperial representative, it will strengthen the case against them when reinforcements arrive. It was a long shot, but worth trying, Olivia nodded. Make your message, but don't reveal anything about Haven's defenses or our capabilities. Tevener composed a formal message in the ancient Zathrai diplomatic language, identifying himself and his official status, and warning the approaching ships that their actions violated the new treaties between humans and the Zathrai Dominion. To everyone's surprise, the lead ship responded almost immediately. On the view screen appeared the face of an older Zathrai, his scales dull with age but his eyes bright with anger. I am Lord Cravaner of House Drelver. You dishonor yourself. By siding with these humans, young one? Remove your ship from our path or be destroyed with them. Tevener stood tall as he replied, My lord, I respectfully remind you that an attack on a human colony is an attack on the Dominion itself under the new treaties. The Imperial fleet will respond. The older Zathrai made a gesture that even the humans recognized as dismissive. The Empress is misguided in her acceptance of these mammals. We will remind her of the proper order of things once we have taught these humans their place. The transmission cut off abruptly. Tevener turned to Olivia, his scales now a pale color. She hadn't seen before. He is not just attacking humans. He's challenging the Empress herself. This is rebellion. Before Olivia could respond, Lisa called out from her station. Captain, I'm picking up a new signal. It's coming from Haven. On the view screen appeared the face of Ambassador Gregory Walsh. Horizon Seeker. This is Ambassador Walsh. I'm on Haven with a delegation from the Zathrai Imperial Court. We've been monitoring the approaching ships. Hold your position and prepare to coordinate with Imperial forces. Imperial forces? Olivia repeated, confused. What Imperial forces? As if in answer to her question, space seemed to ripple behind the 3 House Drelver warships, and suddenly 5 much larger ships appeared, their hulls bearing the unmistakable crest of the Zathra. Imperial fleet. The Empress anticipated this move, Gregory explained, his voice calm despite the tension. She couldn't officially send Imperial ships to protect a human colony without risking further defections among the noble houses. So she came personally, with her loyal guard to observe our new cultural exchange program. The Imperial ships quickly surrounded the House Drelver vessels. For a tense moment, it seemed like Lord Krevener might actually fight, but faced with the superior firepower of the Imperial fleet, the three warships powered down their weapons. "It seems House Drelver has overplayed its hand," Gregory said, with a small smile. "Captain Reeves, please bring your ship to haven. The Empress would like to thank you and your crew personally for your willingness to defend the colony, especially your cultural attach." The next day, on the surface of Haven, a ceremony unlike any in human history took place. The Zathrai Empress, a figure rarely seen even by her own people, stood before a mixed crowd of humans and Zathrai. Beside her stood Ambassador Walsh, Governor Alan Pierce of Haven Colony, and Captain Olivia Reeves with her crew, including Tevener. "Today," the Empress's translator conveyed, "we witnessed the true meaning of the Silvex Kadar, the courage to stand against corruption and aggression, not with greater force, but with moral clarity. House Drelver sought to undermine the peace between our peoples. They failed because both humans and Zathrai chose to honor our agreements despite the risk." She turned to Tevener, who knelt before her. "Rise, Tevener of House Valter." A murmur ran through the Zathrai in the crowd. Tevener looked up in shock. "Your Imperial Majesty, I have no house. I am common-born, no longer," the Empress replied. "For your courage in standing against those who would break our peace, I name you the first member of a new noble house, one open to any who demonstrate true nobility of spirit, regardless of birth or even species." She then turned to Olivia and her crew. "The Dominion honors your willingness to defend those under your protection, even against overwhelming odds. Such courage deserves recognition." From that day forward, relations between humans and Zathrai entered a new phase. The rebellious noble houses, seeing the Empress's personal involvement and the failure of House Drelver's attack, quickly distanced themselves from the conflict. Lord Krevener and his son Renjax were stripped of their titles and placed under Imperial Guard, their house's assets frozen pending a full investigation. Back on Earth, the diplomatic corps was busy analyzing what this meant for the future. Director Samantha Doyle convened a special meeting to discuss the implications. The Empress's creation of a new noble house open to commoners and potentially even non-Zathrai is revolutionary, she told the assembled diplomats. It challenges thousands of years of Zathrai social structure. There will be resistance. But also opportunity, Gregory added. For the first time, we're seeing cracks in the rigid caste system that has defined Zathrai society. Change won't happen overnight, but it has begun. As the meeting continued, a secure message arrived for Gregory. It was from the Empress herself, requesting his presence at the Imperial Palace for a private audience. Such an invitation was unprecedented, no. Non-Zathrai had ever been invited to the inner sanctum of the Imperial Palace. "She wants to discuss the future," Gregory told Samantha after reading the message. "Not just of human-Zathrai relations, but of the Dominion itself." "Be careful," Samantha warned. "Not everyone will welcome these changes. There could be those in the Imperial Court itself who see you as a threat to their way of life." Gregory nodded, knowing she was right. His silent exit from that first meeting had set in motion events that were reshaping an entire civilization. The young noble's insult had led to consequences none of them could have imagined. And now, as he prepared to meet with the Empress of the Zathrai Dominion, Gregory Walsh stood before the massive crystal doors of the Imperial Palace, trying to calm his racing heart. No human had ever been invited here before. The Imperial Guard flanking him were silent, their ceremonial armor gleaming in the light of 3 setting suns. This deep in Zathrai territory, on their homeworld of SciFiPrime, Gregory felt the weight of being the sole representative of humanity in a place that had seen only Zathrai nobles for thousands of years. The doors slid open silently, revealing a long hall lined with living plants that glowed with soft blue light. At the far end sat Empress Vexenal Ra on a simple throne made of some dark material that seemed to absorb light. Unlike the elaborate ceremonial armor she had worn on Haven, here in her private audience chamber she wore only a simple robe marked with the imperial crest. Gregory approached and bowed exactly as protocol required. The Empress gestured for him to rise. "Ambassador Walsh," her translator conveyed, "I thank you for coming so far. What we discussed today must remain between us for now." Gregory nodded. "I understand, Your Imperial Majesty. Earth has authorized me to speak on behalf of all humanity in these discussions." The Empress's inner eyelids flickered in what Gregory now recognized as amusement. Always so formal. "Please sit. What I wish to discuss is not a matter of treaties or trade, but of history and future." A servant brought a chair designed for human anatomy, and Gregory sat, curious about this unexpected turn. "Your discovery of the true origin of the Sylvex Kadar has caused much debate in my court," the Empress continued. "Some of my advisors see it as a threat to our traditions. Others see it as an opportunity to correct centuries of distortion." "And what does Your Majesty see it as?" Gregory asked carefully. "I see it as inevitable," she replied. "All civilizations must eventually confront the gap between their ideals and their practices. The noble houses have maintained power partly by controlling our history, our rituals, our very understanding of what it means to be Zathrai. Your accidental challenge to Renjax merely exposed what has long been hidden." She rose and walked to a wall display showing the Zathrai home system. "For 10,000 years, the noble houses have ruled. In that time, we have spread to 100 worlds, developed technologies beyond imagining, and become one of the dominant powers in this sector of the galaxy. But we have also stagnated, Gregory Walsh. Our rigid social structures have prevented new ideas, new blood." Gregory was surprised by her use of his full name, a sign of personal respect in Zathrai culture. "Change is always difficult, especially for those who benefit from the current system." "Precisely. And that is why I need your help." The Empress turned to face him directly. "I intend to reform the Dominion, to open paths to advancement for all Zathra regardless of birth. The creation of House Valter was just the beginning. But I face strong opposition from houses that have held power since before we reached the stars. What can I possibly do to help? I'm an outsider to your culture." "That is exactly why you can help," the Empress said. "You see us clearly, without the blinders of tradition. And you have already shown remarkable insight into our history, finding truths that even I was not taught." She pressed a control, and a holographic display appeared between them, showing ancient Zathrai texts alongside Vespula archaeological records. "My scholars have been examining the evidence you presented to the Council. They have found much more. It seems the noble houses have been rewriting our history for far longer than anyone suspected. The original Zathrai society was far more open, more merit-based than what we have become." Gregory studied the displays with fascination. "So you want to restore these original traditions?" "Not restore, evolve. We cannot simply return to the past. But we can use these discoveries to justify new paths forward. And that is where humanity comes in," the Empress explained her plan. She wanted to create a joint human Zathrai research team to continue uncovering the true history of her people. These findings would be used to support her reforms, giving them legitimacy in the eyes of tradition-minded Zathra. Additionally, she proposed an expanded exchange program, allowing more Zathra commoners to experience human society and bring new ideas back to the Dominion. "Your culture values innovation, adaptability, individual merit," she said. "These are qualities the Dominion needs to grow beyond its current limitations." Gregory was impressed by her vision but concerned about the risks. "Won't the noble houses see this as an even greater threat?" "They already tried to attack Haven once. They will," the Empress acknowledged. "Which brings me to the final part of my proposal." She activated another display, showing a star system on the border between human and Zathrai space. "This is the Nexus system. Uninhabited, but rich in resources neither of our peoples can easily access alone. One propose we establish a joint Colony, they're a place where humans and Zathrai can work together as equals, developing new technologies and social structures beyond the constraints of either of our traditions. A testing ground for your reforms, Gregory said, understanding immediately. And a symbol of what cooperation can achieve, the Empress added. The noble houses will not dare attack a joint venture with imperial sanction, and those who wish to escape the rigid hierarchy of the Dominion will have somewhere to go. Gregory knew this proposal went far beyond his authority, but he also recognized its potential. I will present this to Earth's leadership. I believe they will see the value in such a partnership. The discussion continued for hours as they worked out the details. By the time Gregory left the Imperial Palace, the first rays of SciFiPrime's 3 suns were breaking over the horizon, symbolically fitting for what felt like the dawn of a new era. 3 months later, the Nexus project was officially announced. Volunteers from both species began preparations for the journey to the border system. Among the first to sign up was Tevener, now head of the newly created House Valter, who would serve as co-governor alongside Dr. Iris Kelly from Earth on the day the first ships departed for Nexus. Gregory stood with Director Samantha Doyle at the Earth spaceport, watching the massive colony vessel rise into the blue sky. Did you ever imagine your walking out of that meeting would lead to all this? Samantha asked. Gregory shook his head. Never. I was just trying to maintain my dignity in the face of an insult. And instead you started a revolution. Not started, Gregory corrected her, revealed. The revolution was already there, waiting to happen. The Zathrai commoners had been waiting for centuries for someone to challenge the noble houses. I just happened to do it in a way they couldn't ignore. As reports came in over the following months, the success of the Nexus colony exceeded all expectations. Humans and Zathrai working together developed new technologies combining the best aspects of both species' approaches. More importantly, they created new social structures that valued both individual merit and community responsibility back in the Dominion. The Empress used these successes to support her ongoing reforms. One by one, the more progressive noble houses began opening their ranks to talented commoners. Trade and cultural exchanges with humanity expanded. The rigid social hierarchy that had defined Zathrai civilization for millennia began to loosen. Not everyone welcomed these changes. Of course, several conservative houses, led by relatives of the disgraced House Drelver, continued to resist. There were protests, political maneuvering, even occasional threats of violence, but the momentum of change proved stronger than the forces of tradition. 1 year to the day after Gregory's silent exit from that first meeting, he received a package from the Empress. Inside was a small crystal pendant bearing the seal of House Valter, along with a note in the Empress's own handwriting, to remind you that sometimes the most powerful statement is no statement at all. The Dominion remembers, Gregory smiled, as he placed the pendant around his neck. Who would have thought that walking away from an insult would change the course of 2 civilizations? That a human diplomat's silence would speak louder than any words could have? As he prepared for his new role as Earth's permanent ambassador to the Zathrai Imperial Court, Gregory Walsh reflected on how a single moment of dignity in the face of prejudice had opened doors no one knew existed. The young alien noble had insulted him, true, but his silent exit had truly said it all, and continues to speak volumes throughout the stars.